This is a very, very passionate subject for many of us in the room, especially women, and it's an important issue that needs to be talked about and discussed, and the biggest thing is something needs to happen about it. And we are trying to do that and to make changes and making laws that will look at and search out and figure out what's going on and make change around this sexual assault, domestic violence stuff. It's just horrible. As you know, earlier we discussed about all the stats out about the statistics around sexual assault and violence toward women, and especially to our Native women. So there was a report that just recently came out, and it's called Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. And just to share some of the information in it. This is by the Urban Indian Health Institute. And this is a division of the Seattle Indian Health Board. And moreover, Abigail Eckelhawk is one of the authors in this and helped put this report together. And we want to acknowledge her for that, and as well as Anita Lushishi, and I probably have messed up her name, and I'm so sorry. But just wanted to just give some stats. And what I want to just acknowledge, due to the Urban Health Institute's limited resources and poor data collection by numerous cities, 506 cases identified in this report are likely an undercount of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in urban areas. A nationwide data crisis, missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. 5,712 cases of missing and women, Native women, were reported in 2016. Only 116 of them were logged into the DOJ database. Murder, the third leading cause of death among American, Indian, Alaskan, Native women. 71% of American Indian, Alaskan Natives live in urban areas. Urban Indians are tribal people currently living off federally defined tribal lands in urban areas. Some of the findings. Approximately 75% of the cases identified had no tribal affiliation listed. 66 of the 506 missing and murdered Indigenous women and girl cases that were identified in the report were tied to domestic and sexual violence. The youngest victim was a baby less than 1 year old. The oldest victim was an elder who was 83 years old. The stats go on and on. 506, 128 were cases of missing Indigenous women. 280 were cases of murdered Indigenous women. 98 cases were unknown status. And when they say unknown status, they couldn't identify the victim because some of them were misidentified, and many of the reports indicated that they were Mexican or Asian, and they were just misidentified. And then 29 of those 506 cases, the median age that were murdered and missing women victims. So these stats are just devastating. So what I want to do at this point is have each one of the panelists please introduce themselves for just a few minutes. Just go down the line and introduce yourselves. And then after we do that, we'll follow up with some questions for them.
My name's Arlene Red-Elk, and I'm really glad to be here. I'm an enrolled Jamestown Clallam tribe over by Sequim. And I currently work with Mother Nation, which I absolutely adore working for. I worked at United Indians of All Tribes for almost 20 years, and before that, the Seattle Indian Center. My mom was one of the founding members of the American Indian Women's Service League, so I've always grown up in service. Right now, I'm married. I have, let's see, between us we have over 30 grandchildren and a whole bunch of great-grandchildren. And I just turned 75. I always tell everybody that, so I'm 3/4 of a century old and healthy as a horse. And yeah. I just went through major hundreds of thousands of dollars of tests, so I'm just fine. You know, really glad. Norine's got me for a few more years. Currently, I work at Mother Nation. I just recently developed an 8-week adult survivor of child sexual abuse program called Yahawi. It's she who holds on to her sacred. And it's all culturally based. We recognize and honor the different medicines that were given to us through our ancestors through different tribes. And we use the 4 sacred medicines, cedar, sage, sweetgrass, and tobacco as a teaching tool to remind our sisters that we've been gifted with many gifts from Mother Earth that can be used in our healing. So we take a real gentle approach to providing services to Native women in need. I love the program. It's an 8-week program. I think I said that, but we're going to continue doing this as long as we can. So there's so many gifts. There's 300 and some tribes, and each one has its own medicine healing process. And since we're an urban program, we're able to honor the ladies that come in from the different tribes and provide them with services that meet their needs, not our needs. And we have hardly any barriers. I think you put your name and address down and age and why you're there, and that's about it. You know, there are really low barriers for women that walk through the door. So really glad to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
My name is Gajit Jalungwas, my Oneida name. I'm from the Oneida Nation tribe from back east, and I'm a Bear Clan member. And my English name is Norine Hill. I'm the founder and director of Mother Nation. We've been working together. I've been really blessed to have these elders come out of retirement and be part of our work. And it's been our Creator's calling for us to be here and do this work. You know, we've gone through a lot. You heard the stats. But, you know, we're also here. We're sitting here today in front of you speaking about it, so it shows our resilience as a Native American people. And that's where I want to stay, is in that space, and that love and kindness and that healing that we do at Mother Nation. And that's what makes us a little bit different and unique in this community. So I'm really happy to be here. I'm not going to go on too long because I know there's a panel going on, so they'll be asking us questions after that. But I am a survivor of everything. I'll just put it that way. But I'll let my sister Deb go next.
Hey, Siam, health attitude. Sit sayaltsa sitsta twal chaf Tulalip. Good morning, dear relatives. My name is Deborah Parker. My traditional name is Sit Sayaltsa. Comes from my grandmother's name 4 generations back. She's from the Snohomish tribe, so our traditional name is Stohobsh. So I come here and want to acknowledge the sacred space of the Duwamish people, and also to send a message that, we don't, federal recognition is critically important, but we don't need a government to tell us who we are. We know who we are. And I come to honor the Duwamish peoples of this land as well, and I know many of the Duwamish people are members of my tribe, the Tulalip tribes, and so we have extended, and we still do extend from the waterways up north towards what is now the Canadian border, to the Cascade Mountains, into the beautiful territory of the Salish Seas, and that's who I am, and that's where I come from. So it's important in our traditional way to explain when you introduce yourself, your name, Sitsayaltsa, and where I come from. So it's an honor to be here. It's a beautiful space here with the sun coming out today in the Northwest. There's no other place to be when the sun is out. And seeing each and every one of you, the diversity in this room is good to see. So, yeah, I'm here, a former vice chairwoman of the Tulalip tribes. I actually stepped down after I served my position and wanted to spend more time with my children, because the children are the heartbeat of our nation, and our children are worth protecting. And so as a mother, that is my sacred obligation, and my role is to protect my children and to protect the land. So my children and I travel all over protecting the environment, but an area of concern, a deep area of concern to my heart, my spirit, and my mind that goes nuts on this issue is protecting women against violence. And as a survivor myself, I have my story as a child of sexual assault. I don't believe in remaining silent, and for me, that's my medicine, is that I share this voice across the country, and so that's been my work as well. So I guess we'll start there, and also I've worked on the Violence Against Women Act for many years and helped pass the 2013 VAWA, and we're now working on the current legislation in the Senate. So we have a lot of work to do.
Dos Hithati Naku Sech Nyake Hanane na Nahase Hise Na Anagach. Hello everybody, good morning. My name's Chelsea Hendrickson. My Northern Rapo name is Nahase Hise, and my Chubut name is Nagach. I'm an enrolled member of the Northern Rapo tribe from the Wind River Indian Reservation in Ethity, Wyoming. And I'm also a Chalista Corporation shareholder of the Chupik people from Makoyak, Alaska. I just want to thank the beautiful Indigenous Sisters Resistance for their beautiful song. Thank you, Guyana, and for the city of Seattle for having me here. It's an honor to be up here next to my sheroes and some of the most important people in my life in the audience. I work full-time as a program coordinator for the Pathways to Healing program. We're a domestic violence sexual assault program for Native families located in Tukwila, Washington, and that's with the Cowlitz Indian tribe. I also work part-time as a youth advocate for the United Indians of All Tribes Foundation's La Batia Youth Home, and that's located in Ballard, Washington. And that's who I am. And we could continue before I get into all the good stuff.
Thank you so much. So let's get started with these questions. The first question is, please each one of you share why this work is important to you, important to your community, whatever you identify as community as being.
Everyone's looking at me, so I'll go first. I think for me, I basically came here from back east living on a prayer. I didn't have a job. I put my kids in a car and came over here. And, you know, I think I needed that time to be away from my community to heal. And I found the importance of that healing. I did go in the mountains in Tennessee and do my healing from my sexual abuse and my trauma, my homelessness, my domestic violence, my addictions, and my alcoholism. You know, and I prayed to the Creator that I'd be able to have this time to heal myself, because I didn't like what I was feeling. I didn't want to carry it anymore. And you know, and I know it stems from our intergenerational trauma we carried in our genes as a Native people. We're born into the grief and loss. And it's up to our generation to change that. So I strongly believe in our prophecies as a Native American woman, an Oneida woman, a Haudenosaunee woman. So that's where I always been grounded with the clan mothers, like how our sister Deb said, you know, that's our sacred responsibility, is to protect our children. And that's what lesson I had to learn in a hard way, you know, before I came over here and started my healing path. So I think that the story that I carry, I really seen the difference in the healing that we did and the helpers that came to me on my path. And when I came here, and I was laid off, I was working at United Indians too. I think a lot of us worked at United Indians here in Seattle. And I was wondering, should I go back home or what should I do? You know, and I started going to the sweat lodges and stuff, and I ended up at Spirit Journey House. It's a Native American women's house for women who are homeless and in addictions. And that's where we started our work, was there. That's where the birth of Mother Nation came from, was that house. You know, that's where I got all my teachings and lessons and healing and all of my trauma. And it just grew from there. And, you know, the elders came forward after that, and we all came together as a community. And I think that the sexual assault is we have to change the narrative. That's what I feel. We were talking on the way up here, me and Deb, and you know, for me, it's important that those words are out there, that our sisters are out there, like Abigail Alcoholic, like Deb Parker, you know, like the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center, and all of the ones that are fighting for the missing and murdered Indigenous women. Our voices need to be heard. You know, a lot of folks don't know about us because of the education system made us invisible. The history was told wrong. So it's up to us to take that stand and change that. But it doesn't have to be so heavy. You know, we have a lot of women that we supported at Mother Nation that are doing excellent in their life now. They've got their kids back. When the system told them that their parental rights were taken, we had them help them get them reinstated. And these are women that have suffered different types of sexual abuse in their lifetime. And they're doing so great now. They're back in their tribal community. They're doing the work that they need to do. They come and visit us, you know, to keep themselves, you know, in a good way. Because we have a sisterhood that we carry, and the first sister that I advocated for was my little sister. And then, you know, and then, so of course, speaking up for myself, I had to get my own protection order when I had to, you know. There's a lot of things I had to do back home to survive. I was on a council as in my tribe as well, but the police were related to my abuser, so they wouldn't come. And I lived on a dead-end road in a community, so I had to go back and learn kickboxing. I had to create my own circle of support. And I was able to thrive and survive over that. And I think the stories that we all share as an Indigenous women is a medicine when we come together in circles. And I really strongly feel that this work is needed right now, and Creator's putting us right where we need to be. So that's where I'm at with this, and I'm going to let other people speak because I could go on. But thank you, Yonko.
It's always hard to talk about your story in a public place, you know. The name of the program that I love so dearly is She Who's Holding On to Her Sacred, because sometimes for survivors, that's all we have left. And we walk through that door, and we have an open arms policy of working with the women that come through that their little spirit is lost, you know. And for myself, for my own story, I hitchhiked from Alberta, Canada, down to White Swan, Washington with my kids. And I never looked back. I walked into the Native American church in the sweat lodge, and I had some absolutely wonderful teachers over the years. And they taught me about who I am and what I can do. And over the years, I ended up with what they call giving me my own fireplace, where I could work with other women and children that had gone through what I had gone through in the sweat lodge. And that's all I've been doing for the last 40 years. I brought one of the first sweat lodges out to Daybreak Star. I remember asking Bernie, there's no place to pray around here. Can I build a lodge out here? And he said, yeah, go ahead. So it's been out there 40 years now. It's come and goes. People rebuild it and come and go, and they have a men's lodge and a women's lodge and all that. But for me, that's part of the culture of healing, is being able to clean yourself off, brush yourself off, normalize how you're feeling, that it's okay to be angry, it's okay to be sad, it's okay to have all those feelings. It's what you do with them that gets you in trouble. A lot of our sisters turn to drugs and alcohol and self-mutilation, those kinds of things. And we work with them on that because it's okay. They're beautiful. The one thing I brought in this last quarter was I use a diamond willow as a healing tool and a journey tool. I don't know if all of you know what a diamond willow looks like, but it's a branch, and it's covered with dark, ugly, gray bark. But as you go down, as you start scraping that bark off, which is your trauma, you come to these beautiful diamonds. They're actually diamond shaped like that. And you scrape around them, you know, and you clean them out. And what I tell the women, I said, that's your journey, that's the beauty in you. So they have this, like a talking stick, they have this diamond willow that they complete during the 8 weeks of the healing, the Yahweh healing circle. And when they're done, they're able to see their journey and remember that the bark that they took off was their trauma. Their trauma is part of who they are, not all of who they are. And we work with them on coming into the present with where they're at with that trauma, because the severity of the stories that we hear, it never ends. But there is healing, and each woman that comes through the program has that opportunity. And we do a series of cultural, we do medicine, Pendleton medicine bags, and they learn about the medicines and how each one can help them in their healing. And we do, Norine does the essential oils, which the lavender and the cedar and all those things come in, and they're all symbols. They're all techniques to remind us that we're in a healing mode. So that's just part of what we do, you know. So any questions?
I guess for me, I started this work because it just is something that, a voice that I needed to have. Feeling like a second-class citizen in my own traditional territory, my own homelands, doesn't feel good. And for me, the need to have a voice to stand up to say that we do exist and that Indigenous peoples are very important to this world. And you know, having that feeling of even living on my reservation, feeling like, and I wasn't able to identify it until I sat on the political platform, the United States political platform, and I realized when our own military was speaking, I realized that something overcame my whole sense that I feel like I'm a prisoner of war on my own reservation, and I wasn't able to define it until that moment. And for me, it's a shame that myself and others have that sense of sadness, of heartache, and of pain. And you know, there's terms for that: intergenerational trauma, and you know, being victims on our own reservation of rape and abuse and neglect, and the highest murder rates in the United States on our reservations. This is a cry for help, and I'm grateful that there's a missing and murdered Indigenous women movement right now, and we definitely need others who share that same care, that same love of humanity, to join us and to not sit back and think that it's okay for another human being to be treated with such disrespect. And that each person in this room and those who will listen to these words, you can do something about this. We don't need to sit in silence. We can help our sisters. We can help our brothers as well. We know our men are being abused as well. So this type of violence, each one of us has a voice, we have a thought, and we can take some great action. So that's why I'm here, is I feel like I'm a simple human being. I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, and many of my family members have been raped and abused, and no justice has been provided to many of our family members. So I'm just standing up for what I believe personally to be true and to be right, because we don't need to be victims of violence. We need to be protected. And I strongly believe that we need to come together as a nation to make sure that our young girls, our young boys are no longer treated this way. And so I believe it's a new day and time, and I do have hope, because that's what we're trained to do, is to help have hope for the future generations. We're taught to look at 7 generations beyond, and I have a daughter, and I want to make sure she is safe, that she can walk, you know, as we hear the sirens going, that she can be in healthy relationships, and that she can be protected. And And if anything does occur, that violence, that she will seek justice and know that there's a court and a judge and police officers and folks that will be there, advocates that will be there to support. But I'm really, really interested in talking about those folks who are raping and making sure that they stop raping. So that's just, I feel like a humble human being in that sense, but there's a strong voice out there, and I know there's other voices, and we need to speak in unison. We need to come together, and I'm grateful each person is in this room, because it's time to speak out and speak our truth, because there's a lot more victims out there than are willing to come forward because they don't feel safe. So let's create that safe space. Yeah, thank you.
Why is this work important to me? It's important to me because I'm a survivor of domestic violence and sexual assault. As Native women, yeah, we know the statistics in Seattle. We know, that report that came out, across the nation. We're aware of that. So not only do I do it for myself, but I do it for my tribe, my community, my people. I feel like it was fate for me, honestly, to be born Northern Rapo and Chupik. My grandfather is full-blood Chupik Eskimo from Macrayac, Alaska, contacted tuberculosis in 1952, was sent down to the Cushman Hospital in Tacoma, where he fell in love with, he claims, the most beautiful Indian woman in the world, my full-blood Northern Rapo grandmother, who in 1952 contracted tuberculosis on the Wind River Reservation in Wyoming. And it's brought me to the spot in time where I'm a humble guest of the Duwamish people. I live in the beautiful Pacific Northwest Coast Salish lands that I absolutely love. I was born and raised here. Excuse me. So not only knowing my own personal history of my tribes, but learning the history of this land. Growing up here, I certainly wasn't taught it in the Seattle Public School District, that's for sure. As I grew older, as I become a woman, I had to go out and find this information on my own and sometimes learn it in a hard way, dealing with racism, dealing with certain things in school and the workplaces. Excuse me. I have a very amazing opportunity now to be in a tribal job in an urban area where I feel like I'm given the opportunity to fully embrace this movement, the Missing Murdered Indigenous Women, to stand up for myself as a young woman and embrace my voice in this movement and empower like Deborah was saying, empower the younger generation beneath me. I was abused from the time when I was 9 till I was like 20 years old. And I, just like Norine said, I think I left my reservation when I was 20 years old to escape that violence, to heal from my own trauma, because that's where majority of that violence was experienced, was on my reservation. And coming here and healing in this beautiful setting with the Coast Salish people, around all these amazing cedar trees in the water and the orcas, really being in a sacred and safe space in the Pacific Northwest. I think it's absolutely important for my community, not only because I think it's amazing that the city of Seattle and the mayor is coming out with these proclamations, that we have a whole audience full of people here today acknowledging it, wanting to spread awareness, but it wasn't like this 10, 20 years ago. My own aunt in 1996 had to spend 18 months in King County Jail, was not allowed to use the battered women's defense in the murder of her violent abusive partner, non-Native partner. And within that 18-month range, my family and herself experienced a whole lot of trauma through this, because of the city of Seattle, because of the city of Seattle prosecutors, because of the justice system that is currently in place here in the city of Seattle, and the views and the ignorance that underlies the surface of the processes and institutions we have here within the criminal and justice system, the education system, and just and privilege that exists in every single space that we encounter here in the city of Seattle. So it's not only important to me because that's what I've experienced as a Native woman, my family's history of here on this land, also because of the big issue of obviously the Duwamish people. If you are a non-native person living on this land, you should absolutely know that story and be an advocate for the Duwamish people. If you know anything about Native people, the biggest thing we fight for is our land, our women, our water, our families, our tribes. So when you look at the Duwamish people, it needs to be flipped completely 360 on the history. So we know the history is completely effed up, right? You came here, you pushed them out. You even put a law in place saying that no one Duwamish person can live in the city of Seattle, but we're going to name this city after your chief, your relative, and not only that, you can't be in the city, you got to get out. Not only that, we're going to take your life source, your river, and we're going to completely desecrate that life source. We're going to straighten it, we're going to shorten it, we're going to deepen it, we're going to make it for industrial use, and we're going to completely kill the salmon and, the sacred things that belong to the people here, the orcas, the salmon, the water, and put in place all these racist processes. And now here we are in 2019. That's amazing. Awareness is it's being talked about, and awareness is happening. But those immediate things, I think, need to change in contrast to the history. I agree. They need to be federally recognized. Yeah, the reservation needs to be right here in the heart of Seattle. The Alki Beach needs to be given up. Amazon, Microsoft, people need to be paying rent. You ever hear real rent, Duwamish? So that, in a nutshell, that's why it's important to my community. Yeah, I'll cut myself off there.
Wow, this is just amazing. Thank you all for sharing. This is amazing. Thank you for the conversation. Thank you for feeling comfortable to be in this setting and sharing crucial information and painful stories about the land and things like that. Thank you so much. Let's move to the next question. How is your organization addressing sexual assault, sexual violence in your organizations? Anyone feel free to start.
United Indians, I think we had, besides the Lummi tribe, had one of the first urban programs that addressed adult survivors of child sexual abuse, and we ran that for several years. And then when I retired, Norine somehow found me, and we've been actually doing it all along, but not in a formal city-funded or federal-funded way. But I went to Norine and I told her that, I've been doing this work for 30, 40 years, and a lot of it seemed to be really mainstream, no really educational therapy, things to think about in your healing process. And I told her that I wanted to do something culturally. I wanted to do cultural healing things that would allow a Native woman to come in, that would open the door for a Native woman to come into our program and actually look at the healing process. So I told her what I'd like to do and developed an 8-week program. Again, it's called Yahawi, she who's holding on to her sacred. And it's really gentle, and I think that's one of the blessings at Mother Nation, is that we're a gentle program. People can come into our program with all the anxiety and fear that a survivor might bring in with them, because they haven't had the opportunity to address their own tribal cultural values. And so what I did was develop the program based on the medicines that were gifted to us from Mother Earth in order to help us in our healing process. And part of that comes in the educational therapy. So we use tools that address the different areas, like the medicine bags. As they begin to learn about the different medicines available, they take that medicine and put it in their bag. And by the end of the program, they have their own medicine bag filled with the things that they need in order to brush themselves off or wipe themselves off or whatever they do. And then we do this, I like this one, it's called a healing shield. And what they do is they make a shield, and on the shield they put things that have helped them in their recovery. Like some will put a sweat lodge on there, some will put a teepee on there, all kinds of different things. Some put a handprint on there, or a footprint, or whatever their story is, they'll visualize it through art on their shield, and when they're done, they'll tell their stories. And we also have, I call it a developmental dream catcher. It's not just any old dream catcher. You pick a bead for each event in your life, important event in your life, and you build that into the dream catcher. And when they're done, they're able to see that the trauma is just part of who they are, not all of who they are. So there's all kinds of things in Native culture that address these beautiful healing processes. And that's how I'm addressing sexual violence. There's no one that comes into our program that I turn down. I haven't seen any, thought of anyone. And that only includes, not only includes the women, but our men. There's a lot of men that have suffered from sexual violence, and we address those. Well, I've addressed it in the past with cultural healing, with some of the men folk that have come when I used to work at United Indians. But I think the most powerful opportunity for because I'm a sweat lodge leader, and the most powerful thing is the sweat lodge, because it's a time that you can symbolize yourself going into, they call Ina Makama, the earth, going into the lodge. You're going in innocent and heavy, you know, and in each round you take, for the 4 directions, you start cleaning yourself off, you know, and taking care of yourself, and saying your prayers or what you want to change. And usually I've seen some miracles happen in there. I remember working with one lady that she couldn't walk by her washer and dryer because the smell from those little things you throw in there would give her such traumatic memory that she just couldn't function. And over the time, she began to learn how to manage how she's thinking and feeling, and that it wasn't her fault, that, you know, she has the right to be happy and carefree and loving, you know, all those things. But anyways, we were in a sweat one time, and she let out this great big war whoop, like, oh my God, I got it. You know, and from that point on, she never had the horrific traumatic memories go through her mind. But things like that happen all the time in there. People will feel safe, and that's one of the main things with Mother Nation, is that the people that come in there feel safe. We make them feel safe. We're gentle, we're loving, we're caring, and those are the things that we do there. So that's just one area that we address, the sexual violence with adult survivors.
Thank you. Okay. I guess building on to what Arlene's talking about, we also do the advocacy as well. So the work that we began doing in the streets, like we didn't have an office. I was working out of my car. I still do that sometimes, but I try not to because I'm an executive director now. But, you know, but if I see something, I'll pull over and see if we can offer support. And I think building the trust is a really important thing for our community. And when they know you've been there and you've been in that life before, they trust you. And like Arlene says, you have to have that trauma-informed care environment. And I know there's a lot of different talk of trauma-informed care, the trainings. That's our way as a Native American people. Those are our values that we've been carrying for centuries. So we carry that into our work. And I guess the work that we do, we go to court as well when they're charging their abuser. We'll go to court with them. And like Arlene said, I use the essential oils because in the court you can't smudge with sage in there. You can't light any smoke or anything like that. So 2 of the homeless women I helped before, we moved them into our recovery house, and they found out about essential oils, and they kept telling me, Norine, you got to come to this group. I said, what am I going to do with essential oils? You know, so they finally got me there, and I seen the strength of it and how it became a medicine for me, because it comes from our Mother Earth. When you think about it, that's where it comes from. So we started applying teachings to it. And the women that brought it to me, they told me that it helped them with their PTSD, you know, and they started learning. So I asked the people that were running the program, I said, if I write a grant and if I get it, can you come to our women's house and train them to be wellness advocates, these two ladies? Sure, we'll do it. We got the grant, they came over, and now we have two wellness advocates who came from, you know, all different walks of trauma in their life. And we apply those teachings to Mother Nation services to women that are in court in a rape case. You know, so Chelsea was with us that day. You know, we worked together with Cowlitz. We have a really good close working relationship with Cowlitz. I think we first both started, we only had a few staff, and I think they're into 2 buildings now, the Cowlitz Tribal Health. So they're doing amazing work, and I know we're the only 2 direct service providers in Seattle for our community, for the Native women. And we work really closely together. It's a sisterhood with us as well. You know, they're a sister organization, but literally we have a sisterhood that we work together on. And one of the ladies that was in court, she says, can I take a break? And she says, I need you to oil me up right now. So we took off around the corner and we did the oils for her. I call it a PTS keychain kit. That's what I give to our new staff now to take with them when they're out in the streets. And she oiled up and she got back on that stand and she just put that lawyer in his place, and they finally, you know, she put him away for life, this guy. It was his 3rd time offending, and she was one of the 3rd ones that stepped forward. You know, I think it was like 10 years or something that happened before or something like that. It's been hard on her, though, you know. We still have to work with her. And the important thing, I think, in this work is the aftercare. You know, a lot of the way the programs are designed, like everybody's in silos. You have SA, you have DV, you know, trafficking over here. We put it all together in a circle, and that's what the Yahweh Services program is. It's all of those areas. We have 2 advocates we've hired on staff now. One is covering North Seattle, one is covering South Seattle. And of course, we have Arlene to guide us. We also have other elders. We have Alma Goddard, who's been in the DV movement forever too as well, and she guides our work. And we have Ramona Otto, she's our chairwoman of Mother Nation, and she has a really strong gift in facilitation teaching. She's a healer. She also specializes in grief and loss. So we do trainings out in the tribes. We went to Tulalip, Legacy of Healing, and we did a training on grief and loss. And the way that we designed it is when women have to leave their homes, that's a loss of their home. They have to leave even though this man was horrible to her, that's still her family, so she had to leave her family. So she's suffering all these griefs and losses in her life. So we trained the advocates in a few of the tribes on how to address that with their clients. And what came up during our trainings was the staff says, well, we got grief and loss, you know, so we were able to, you know, heal. And in this work, you heal with the people that you serve. If you're that person, you can heal with them. And that's where I've grown. We came from Native Women in Need, which we just picked the name out at the last minute, used it, and it worked, you know, and then we were blessed by Creator to have, I can't remember the name of them now. This global marketing firm came to me and said, what if we work with you and help you get a brand? I said, a brand? You know, a brand on healing? Like, I didn't understand it. But he asked me, so do you want to change your name from Native Women Need to something else? I was like, I don't know. You know, and we did. We changed it to Mother Nation. That's what came out of it. And the way that they presented it to us, the way that the screen came across, and I brought in people that I helped with. I brought in a sister to Velma to be part of it. And the elders were there, and it said, we're the daughters of warriors, the sisters of survivors, and the mothers of the resilient. And then it came up, Mother Nation, and we just kind of had tears coming down our eyes, and that reflects our healing. That reflects the healing that we went from Native Women in Need to Mother Nation. You know, now we're getting a lot of public funding, we're getting a lot of gender-based violence grants, and we have those advocates in place. We're trying to get CPS support too. We want to get a CPS advocate in place because a lot of these women that come to us with SA, sexual assault, they're fighting the courts for their kids, you know, and they need that advocate to sit there with them, someone to watch the worker that's watching them, you know, just to know that there's someone else sitting there, making sure that everybody's following their responsibility. And that's what I was doing when I was out there working out of my car. That's what I was doing, and you know, it's needed, and that's part of their survival. Like Deb says, you know, your responsibility is to protect your children. The women can't be whole unless they got their kids. You know, they have to have their children in their life, and we see that a lot. And we're moving into trafficking now. We've have some trafficking survivors that we've been working with over the last 5 years. We brought them into the sweat lodge, you know, and we also have a traditional healer that comes in that supports the Yahweh circles as well. She does body work to move the trauma out of the body. And she's holding a Shoni like me. She comes in. We're going to be bringing a massage. Like, it just, we're evolving as we grow. And the different healers come forward, and we bring them on board. And it helps them get out of that, get off the cliff, you know, so that they can stay in those workshops and be committed to the groups. Because the groups, you have to be committed. It's 8 weeks. It's 8 weeks. And now we have the next group full, and we have a waiting list for that Yahweh Services Circle. And we're only having it in one location right now, so we want to move it to the north as well. So if you know anybody who has office space, we're looking for space in the north for Mother Nation. We've outgrown our South Seattle side. We want to keep it, but we don't have room for our groups. We need more spaces. And we have male staff now, so we're supporting single dads. And some of them, you know, are survivors of sexual assault. So we have a men's group on Wednesday nights that we do. And Glenn Pinkham runs those. He's from Yakama Nation. He carries a lot of teachings. We're starting a youth camp this summer. You know, we have some youth that are really giving their parents a hard time. So we're bringing in a traditional healer from South Dakota that we made friends with. He's coming in and bringing his teachings. He's been on TV for his work at Pine Ridge. So we kind of like, we're this network of Native American people that come together. And, you know, he's going to bring in those teachings to help them to be men because their dads aren't there. Nobody's teaching them how to be men. And he's bringing in his teachings, and we're going to do a sweat on the third day. Well, not me, but he's doing it. You know, but it feels like we. and that's what it is. You know, we're all this circle. We're this circle of support for our community. And every one of you that are here are part of that because you're here, because you care. And I really appreciate you all being here. And I'll stop there. Thank you. Have you got one?
Oh, I'll just I'll briefly mention the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center. You can go to niwrc.org, and that's where you can see some of the national connections that we have to help Native women and children. We also have what's called a Strong Hearts Native Helpline, and I believe we started that. This is second year, maybe second or third. Time flies, but it has been a great partnership with the national hotline. So I was able to go to Texas to see the amount of work taken place to help victims nationally. And so this is, we have our trained counselors who are working with a national hotline, and so that's something we're very proud of. We also have a restoration magazine, and we also support organizations such as not Native Women in Need, Mother Nation. When they change their names, I still am in the old way, but it is critically important to support these types of organizations that are very grassroots, very community-driven, very much hits to the heart and soul of who we are in our community, and the safety and the need for our elders and our traditional ways to come back to heal and to help us so that we can continue to grow as healthy human beings and raise our children in that light. So very grateful for organizations such as Mother Nation. And so I would recommend, I would completely, there's ways that you can help, and that's to help donate to make their dreams a reality. And I'm a volunteer, so I'm a very proud volunteer, and I know that they can always use the support because they help women where they're at. I mean, it's some of the stories, I don't know how, these are my heroes here, Shiro's, that really, Shiro's, and I know they don't like to hear this because they work around the clock as well, and it's just, it's very humbling to sit beside women who really care about others, and there's no time to help in the middle of the night, the weekends, there's no time. It's just when someone needs help, we're there to help.
I'm really thankful to be part of the Pathways to Healing program. If anyone knows Deborah Hassler, she is amazing, powerhouse in addressing sexual violence. She started the Pathways to Healing program within the Cowlitz. So she's a Cowlitz not only a Cowlitz tribal member, but a Cowlitz councilwoman. So she started Pathways to Healing down in the Vancouver area about 13 years ago, and since then she's got 3 offices: Vancouver, Longview, and Pathways to Healing moved to the Tukwila location about 3 years ago. And we currently have an advocate, me, the program coordinator, and a mental health therapist who gives free trauma-informed therapy to our clients. So that's really hard to find. Deborah, I also am really lucky and thankful to be under the guidance of not only, you know, a councilwoman, but someone who gives me the creative freedom to mold what I wanted to do within the program that I am. It's a new program. We're in Tukwila, and within that, I've created a MMIW workshop. I call it the Spirit of Resiliency. I start off talking about MMIW grassroots, where it came from. I delve into a little bit about the report you mentioned, the MMIWG report that was released by UIHI and SIHB. And at the end, the last 30 minutes, I tell my aunt's story of, you know, her domestic violence situation within the city of Seattle, how she had to serve the time in King County Jail because they wouldn't let her use the battered women's defense. And not only that, because she couldn't afford bail. In 1998, there wasn't amazing programs like Mother Nation there to go with my aunt to court. We didn't have an advocate. My aunt didn't have an advocate when she was sitting in front of a 13-person jury of all, nobody was her peer. Not one single person was Native. While they were raising their eyebrows and laughing at her, they had to get a whole new judge, and it was a hung trial, and there was a lot of trauma within that court system. And there wasn't amazing programs like my program, Pathways to Healing, who comes up to Seattle courts, and we go in, like Norine said, I've been in a rape trial here in Seattle supporting another Native woman, and I just think back, God, what if my aunt had this? Maybe she would be alive today. If my aunt had amazing women or programs like Mother Nation or Pathways to Healing, to be there in court with her or to support her, to have these cultural components and people, Native women to gather around her and uplift her. But Seattle didn't have that in 1996, so I'm very humbled to not only be a part of that change, but to that healing to be a part of me also. So I've taken my workshop in that story to Overlake School in Redmond. I presented at Garfield, my alumni school, Gold Bulldogs, Garfield High School in the Central District. I presented at Rainier Beach High School's block party a couple weeks ago. Thank you. And it's been. And I'm very thankful, like I said, for supervisors who's allowing me to not let the city of Seattle forget that they have a lot of things they need to work on. They have a lot of processes and things they need to change. They need to start hiring more people. They need to really start making these true relationships for programs like ours. If they want to address the sexual violence that's happening in the city of Seattle also. Yeah, so that's how we address, and we address it in multiple plethora of ways. Like my coworker, Judith Johnston, she's our advocate. She's non-Native. She's currently like on a task force right now for Aaron's Law. And somebody might have to Google check me, but Aaron's Law is the law that's about to get passed, I think, right now. That's going to require Washington schools to implement some sort of sexual assault awareness within the school system. So she's on that task force. I'm, part of the U.S. Boarding Schools Healing Coalition. There's multiple and plethora of ways that we're addressing sexual violence, and combined in our relationships with Mother Nation, like we're powerhouses together. So I want to give ourselves a pat on the back. You know what I mean? Because we're doing the work. Yeah, we truly are putting in the work that it takes to address the huge issue of sexual violence that's happening in Seattle. Absolutely.
How can non-Native people best support uplifting and storytelling in like an ethical and meaningful and intentional way, rather than just like kind of jumping on the bandwagon? Does that make sense? Checking your own privilege at the door. So not only
as non-Native people, do you have a... Okay, let me say it a little louder. Check your white privilege at the door, people. Especially in the city of Seattle. I've lived in Wyoming, I lived in Alaska, and Seattle has a lot of white privilege, a crazy amount of white privilege. There's a lot of experience I've had with non-Native people and white people. It's thinking they know me, they know my story. Oh, we were born and raised in Seattle, so we know the Duwamish people, we know their story. The best way you could probably do that, honestly, the only thing I think of off the top of my head is money. That little NPR thing you donate to every month for the little tote or whatever, take that money to UIHI. Take that money to SIHB, give it to Mother Nation, Chief Seattle Club, you know what I mean? There's a lot of things you could do when you check that privilege and look beyond the things you're used to in your daily thing. Re-indigenize and decolonize your mindset of the Western European standards that you want to hold yourself to, and do the work that you have to do to really make change in your community and to support people of color, and specifically Native women.
She's got the heart right now. She's got that young, youthful heart. Gloria.
Sorry.
We're kind of like, we've been there, we've done that. But
I know I'm like the angry person up here, right?
no, you're not. No, you're right where you need to be. I think for us, or for me individually, just being at the tables now, since we got these gender-based violence grants, we're at the table now. The doors are opening for us. Before we lived on a prayer, we had tribal donations. I'd have a little tin can I'd go around with and work with women on the streets, but now we got funding. And but what I'm saying is that there's not very many of me sitting at the table. I'm the only one sometimes sitting at those tables. And, the support is needed. Everything that you're learning today, you can tell a friend, you can tell a police officer, you can tell a SPD advocate, because we've had issues with all of them, and racial discrimination against our women who just want help. They just want services. They just want help. And we have some stories on our website of our Native sisters who survived. There's some stories on there. We have Alina's story. She was one of the ones that was left in her graveyard for dead. She was urinated on, and she moved into our women's house. She needed advocacy, and when she was in court, they were getting ready for the court during the deposition and stuff like that. Her SPD advocate turned off the tape and says, "Isn't this normal for your people to get drunk and fight each other?" And it wasn't even a Native person that did this to her. 70% of our abusers are not Native, just so you all know that. And there's a lot of stigma and stereotype about us that we drink and stuff like that. And we're survivors. We're in recovery. A lot of us never drank a drop. My one son hasn't. I have relatives that haven't. There's just, and a lot of the tribes that are casino tribes, and nothing against Tulalip or anybody else, but people sometimes will send women to go get help, and they'll say, "Why don't you go to Tulalip? Why don't you go to Muckleshoot? Why are you coming here?" And they're in the city of Seattle. There's a stigma out there that we're all connected, and Tulalip's going to pay for us all. Or Muckleshoot's going to pay for us all. When they got their own responsibilities, they got their own territorial things. The government gives them half the money that they need to get their work done. Because I used to be on council, I know that story. And I think even the essay, the training, that we have to send our staff, to the core advocacy training as part of our grant, and they need to go to that. So they go to that, but there's nothing's mentioned at all about missing and murdered Indigenous women in that training. So those trainings need to be changed to tell what's going on, to get caught up to us. And a lot of the work we're doing is, the trauma-informed care work we always do. We do a trauma-informed care work. We have Native providers that meet once a month. All of the ones that work with the homeless, they come together. Mother Nation kind of kick-started that whole thing, and they're healing together as frontline staff that are out there on the streets, because it's hard to see what they see. It's hard not to grab a sister and take her and say, "Come on, I'm going to save you and take you out of this." They see a lot of hardships there, so they're coming together once a month, and that unity is happening. And I think that there's a move now to move homelessness of King County and Seattle together, to start working together. And that's what we're doing already as a Native community. So there's a lot to be learned by our people if everybody's open by that. And I think to open those doors for us so that, and if you do have survivors out there that's with your, send them to us. If they want, send them to us. We can co-advocate. We can work together for them and change the narrative, like Chelsea said in her wonderful way.